Personal defense weapons, or PDWs for short, are not really a new concept. In fact, it's been around since before World War I. But is this a PDW? I'm Chris with Jerry'sOutdoorSports.com, and let's get into the SIG MPX Copperhead, which is also one of our giveaway guns. If you ever assumed that your workout routine of 2 miles on the treadmill 3 to 4 times a week was perfectly adequate, only to be viciously called out by your chest rig when you put it on in the spring, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. So YouTube hates us, and they would love nothing more than to see us fade away and die. So if you like content like this, go ahead and share with your friends and sign up for notifications. And if you want to support Jerry'sOutdoorSports.com more, go ahead and hit up our web store and pick up whatever you need. Historically, combat rifles have been rather large and cumbersome and, well, really effective for frontline action. For support personnel, they become a massive liability. So the first knee-jerk response to this was to issue artillerymen and truck drivers and support personnel pistols. But when you find yourself in contact with rifle-armed attackers at 200 yards, a pistol is an incredibly poor tool for the job. Another attempt to solve this dilemma was with carbines. And while the shorter rifles worked well, there was a much higher demand for these systems by the cavalry because horse-mounted cavalry was still a thing at the time. So the vast majority of production of these systems went straight to frontline use again. The next attempt to solve this was to slap a stock on a pistol to make it more stable for longer shots. Systems like the artillery Luger actually had sights on them that were graduated out to well beyond realistic distances and right in the realm of lunacy. The advent of submachine guns also offered another answer to this dilemma, and arguably the most successful and recognizable PDW is the H&K MP5K, though the Uzi does deserve an honorable mention, particularly for its role in the Secret Service's response to one of Reagan's assassination attempts. So the last 30 years of conversations about PDWs has been dominated by the P90 and the MP7, which I'll talk at length about those later on, but here's your daily reminder that things that were made in the 90s are 30 years old rather than 10 or 20 like we all think. The stock pistol concept is still alive and kicking. You've got the Flux Raider, and I even remember in the wake of the Charlie Hebdo attacks in France how B&T suggested that their USW was the item that would have fixed it all. But let's get serious. If you're facing attackers armed with rifles and all you've got is a pistol with a stock glued on it, your outcomes aren't going to be great. No better than if you had a vanilla pistol anyway. So the question I'm left with is this. Is a micro 9mm PDW still viable? The MPX Copperhead from SIG has a 4.5-inch barrel, completely ambidextrous controls, and comes in at 4.3 pounds before accessories. But here's where it gets interesting for you guys. We are giving away a full loadout kit. You're going to get the 403B green dot, the Strike Industries FSA dual folding stabilizer, a FAB Defense single point sling to hump it around, 5 extra magazines, and the excellent Stealth Skunk chest rig from my buddy over at Moonlight Industries. If you want to get entered for that, go to the link tree in the description and maybe you'll find out how. Shooting the Copperhead is different than shooting other 9s like the APC or the Scorpion. And that's because it runs a gas system in there. As a result, that soft recoil really gives you a feeling that you have the confidence to run it faster and faster and faster until you get to my most glaring issue with the Copperhead. And that's the trigger. The trigger is heavy. I mean like 8 pounds heavy. And not very communicative either. When you get on it, you just start pulling and pulling and pulling. It's not like there's much take up. And you're not really even sure you find a wall. You just put more and more and more and more and more and more, and then it finally breaks. It's kind of like sitting there with an NPC staring at you in Skyrim while you try and figure out which speech option to choose. After you get done pulling the trigger, you're just left with burning existential questions like, is time even real? And then you get to experience the reset, which is perfect. It's tactile and audible. And honestly, it kind of feels like having a great glass of wine after the most lifeless, horrible British meal you could imagine. Seriously, with SIG's expertise, I would have expected a lot more out of this. And I'm kind of at the point where I'm just over anything having a bad trigger. The Copperhead is minuscule and almost tailor-made for non-permissive environments where a pistol just won't cut it. Even if it is an absolute hot rod of a pistol like this Smith and Wesson M&P5.7 chambered in the 5.7 that, honestly, that round was supposed to make this whole conversation moot, but I digress. Now, after my time running with some personal security detail teams, I learned that well-executed ambushes start at about 100 to 200 yards with smaller elements moving up under covering fire, while poorly executed ones start at about 10 to 25 yards and just evolve from there. And if you need proof of that, just look at Archduke Franz Ferdinand's. Now, with shooting, you do need to be pretty aware of the height over bore. It's a little bit taller than your standard AR platform because of the gas piston system in there. And with the Copperhead, you get no accessory mounts anywhere but on the top rail. So if you want lights or lasers, you're gonna have to get creative with it. The magwell is huge and graciously sloped, so if you can't hit it, well, there's just no risk of you ever finding a hole. So earlier I posed the question, is the Copperhead a PDW? Well, it's got some issues that really work against it in that role. First being the placement of your hand up front. Because the gas piston lives right here, after a couple of magazines, this area just gets cooking hot. So you're gonna want to either come down to like a bad magwell hold or just run it like a pistol. The full-size MPX doesn't really have that issue because you've got way more real estate for your hand up there. The next is you're married to a one-point sling with this. Unless you want to use up some of the valuable top rail space for a Rube Goldberg sling attachment, this is your one and only hope. Now, I tried 3 different QD swivels in there, and every one of them included getting a grip on that really small grip right there. And single point slings just suck. I remember when I was super excited and got my first one from the PX in 2007, threw it on my rifle, and then I just let it fall like I would with a normal sling, and that was not comfortable. Single point slings are just universally terrible, and you should avoid them at all costs. Now, is this going to give you more capability than a pistol? Well, yeah, definitely. Like we showed that with a 100-yard shot there. And given that it has commonality with controls of standard AR systems, cross-training for crews won't be that hard. But there are just way better choices to equip fuelers and engineers and mechanics with than this little guy. Well, there it is, the MPX Copperhead from SIG. It exists beautifully in this microcosm between pistols and carbines and even some of the larger subguns in its own category. And no, it doesn't perform brilliantly in all its roles. It still offers a lot of capability in a very tiny package. If you're going somewhere where a pistol just won't cut it, but you still need to remain undetected, the MPX Copperhead is a beautiful system for that job. And there's absolutely no denying it has plenty of drip for the gram. If you want to get signed up for giveaways like this and other ones coming up, go ahead and make sure you follow the link tree in the description. Anyway, I'm Chris for jerrysoutdoorsports.com. I'm going to go find some vodka to put in this.